Welcome to another episode of NBM Talks, a series of the Narrative-Based Medicine Lab, where we speak with individuals who are working at the intersection of literature, medicine, and health. Our guests are writers, clinicians, scholars, artists, and advocates who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the field. Together we discuss how we can engage with narrative-based medicine principles and practices in creative and diverse ways. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to the NBM Talks podcast. I'm Sarah Kim, the Medical Education Health Humanities Theme Lead for Temerity Faculty of Medicine at the University of Toronto. And today our guest is Dr. Anne Matlow. I'll begin just by reading a quick description of a summary, a very brief summary of Anne's work. Anne Matlow is a professor emerita in the Department of Medicine at the Temerity Faculty of Medicine, University of Toronto, where she oversees leadership activities in postgraduate medicine. She has held numerous leadership positions in the past, including locally as the director at the Sick Kids site for U of T Center for Quality Improvement and Patient Safety, as well as nationally as a member board executive of the Canadian Patient Safety Institute, and internationally as a founding member and past co-president of Sanokondu, an international community of practice dedicated to fostering healthcare leadership education worldwide, and founding member and chair of PIPSQC, the Pediatric International Patient Safety and Quality Collaborative. Anne is a LEADS Global, that's LEADS, and CCHL Leadership Facilitator and Coach. As a certified executive coach accredited through the International Coaching Federation, her focus is on supporting physicians, particularly those in academic medicine, along their leadership trajectory through transformational coaching and vertical development. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you, Sarah.
Often we will begin because our listeners like to hear a bit more about how you arrived to where you find yourself right now in your work.
A long journey, a very gratifying journey, starting with the typical route through medicine, infectious diseases as my specialty with internal medicine. A couple of years in the middle doing a master's degree, came back on staff in infectious diseases at the height of the AIDS epidemic. And being a mother to young children, married to a surgeon, I needed an out from heavy clinical medicine with the HIV patients coming in at any hours very, very unwell. So I backed up and took advantage of my microbiology certification, and I moved to Sick Kids. And from then, I got involved in quality and patient safety and on to medical education. And just through circuitous routes, I ended up at the Faculty of Medicine Postgrad Education head office as it relates to leadership development. So I have found my niche. And all along the way, there have been opportunities that have allowed me to enhance the job that I'm doing just by collaboration and networking beyond. And I think one of the most gratifying things I've done in latter years is during COVID, when we were all very isolated. And I felt like that quote-unquote caring gene, that is how I have described it, was a little bit rusty because I missed the patient contact and the one-to-one, even seeing people at work. I took an online coaching certification, which is how I ended up as an executive coach.
Great. Thank you for that. And, in a side conversation we had is you were mentioning how so much of your coaching work does actually overlap with things on the themes that we touch on in narrative medicine. And I thought you'd like to speak a bit more to that.
I would indeed. A classic line that I use often when trying to understand what the coachee is bringing to the table, so to speak, is what story are you telling yourself? So the reality is that people create their own truth or their own story. I mean, I can't deny that we're both sitting here with headphones, and doing a wonderful tape. So there is some reality. But if you and I looked at something out in nature, for example, we may see things differently based on our past experience, what we let in through the window of our eyes, how we interpret what we see, and the actionable behavior that arises from that experience. So people's behavior and actions, how they represent themselves, the story that they're telling themselves, and how that can spiral into negative talk, can get people in, I will say, trouble. But the whole issue of the story that we tell and how a coach can help the individual reframe that narrative so that they see things differently. It's about perspective and how they can channel that energy into something that is more productive for them and their life.
If you are, I'm wondering if you could speak a bit further how you see your coaching role, but also this idea of narrative in medicine and its application in medical education and in professional development and continuing professional development.
Okay, I could say a few things about that. Narrative medicine, I mean, I've taken to the practice of journaling, and it is one way of seeing the story we tell ourselves, because we don't often take the time. It's a type of reflection, right? And we know the importance of reflection and how that helps guide us into what we may do differently, just the opportunity to reflect back, take the time to see things perhaps differently. So taking the time to reflect and have that impact on how we go forward, because it's all dynamic, right? We're changing, circumstances will arise that will be different, but do we have the tools based on yesterday to adapt for tomorrow? So that whole reflection and that narrative that goes with it. In coaching, the whole narrative piece is fundamental, as I started to speak about before. People come to you with a challenge. You need to understand why that challenge is important to them and what they would like to see different as a result of the coaching experience. And in defining what would be different, you sort of have a model. So how does where they are right now impact on where they want to go? And the stories that they have entrenched through neural pathways based on their values, beliefs, previous experience, often, if not usually, need a revisit to help them get to tomorrow in a way that'll service them better. I mean, they clearly come with a challenge in the first place, even though I would say that we could all benefit from coaching, because we don't often get the opportunity to do that deep dive, even electively, so to speak, just to see what makes us tick. We go on day to day, you know.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you have a practice of journaling, and I'm curious, are there other tools or other things that you do for yourself in your life that'll help you to ground back into where providing the perspective you might need, or just to allow a space for who is Anne versus Anne and the many hats that Anne wears?
Yeah, that's great. And what I will say feeds into my journaling. In fact, I usually journal after a facilitated meditation that I do. So I started with the meditation app. This is not a sales pitch. It doesn't really matter. I'll take that back. But I do facilitated meditation. And I don't find it easy just to do meditation on my own. So I find this facilitation, listening to a podcast for 10 to 15 minutes, even whatever, and then thinking about it as it relates to my life, and then writing about it, asking the questions, writing down key learnings. Those help me move forward.
And often our listeners also like to hear about something you might be reading these days, or a music, some kind of music you're listening to, or a play or a film you might have seen, something out in the dance piece.
I will double dip on that a little bit, because I play ukulele, and it is, again, since COVID, it has become what I do Thursday nights with practicing in between. And the teacher, it's online, He's got a group. Thursday nights we meet, and he teaches online, shows the chart, and everybody plays. And you get the opportunity for an open mic. So the theme of the month is Beatles. And I decided to challenge myself to do Blackbird, which is a lot of chords, not just strumming chords. So I'm challenging myself by the end of the month. But I did just finish a book that really impacted me deeply, and it is called The Emperor of Gladness. Did you read that one?
Oh, I'm reading that.
Oh, are you right
currently.
now?
Yeah.
So we're not. So I listened to it. It was a great audio. Are you listening or reading?
I'm reading it.
Okay, so I audiobooked it. The reading of it was fantastic. The guy had different accents, but I was so struck by the brilliance of that author. I had to look him up. He was a MacArthur Genius Scholarship. Ocean Vuong is the name, recommended to everybody. It's quite a trip. I won't give away the ending.
Yes. Yeah. Ocean Vuong is,
Yes.
I think, initially began with poetry.
Yes,
and
indeed.
still is a poet.
Mhm.
And so I do find that many of the sentences that he writes
Oh yeah.
are just beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what was it about this particular novel of his, The Emperor of Gladness, that stayed with you?
I think the way he described it's. I'm going to use the word offbeat because when you think about it, it's a little bizarre, The encounters, the people, the descriptions. It's like a cast of characters. If you were to make it a movie out of it, you would say you'd think it was like a psychedelic trip or something. Like, who are all these characters? But he brings them all together. There is love, not in the usual way, a beautiful relationship between a young gentleman and an elderly Eastern European woman. I can't remember where it was.
Lithuanian.
Lithuanian, indeed. And just a mutual respect. I mean, it just covers so many emotions. Yeah, I will leave it at that because I don't want to spoil it for Sarah. But again, he is a master of words and descriptors, and it is a brilliant, brilliant book.
Yes. I'll say that as I'm reading it so far, it provides a glimpse into some of the home life that some of our patients will have that we don't necessarily have the time to fully appreciate the struggles that they are going through when they arrive at clinic. And so that's been something I've been thinking quite a bit about, of how we have these little glimpse moments, and which can actually be quite informative in terms of addressing or meeting the person who's sitting in front of you. And so that, again, is just this idea of the power of the story, and also giving space for story in our healthcare practices.
So true, Sarah. And do we do enough of it? The crunch for time, people.
I'm curious, as a coach, I'm sure you have people you've worked with that have talked about this time crunch. And what are some of the things that you might coach them through in changing their perspective, or the kinds of stories they tell themselves around time?
Right, that's a great question. So I like to look at things or divide them into transactional and transformational. So transactional is almost like a technical, logistical approach. People talk about making a 24-hour pie. How do you spend your time during your day? Are you spending your time doing what you want to be doing, or what is in your best interest for where you want to be? Sometimes when you see it in front of you, it is an opportunity to rejig. But I love the idea of reframing the whole time crunch to energy crunch. Where are you spending your energy? Is some of your energy being misused, for example, in obligations, in drama that doesn't serve you well, being quote unquote busy when you don't need to be busy. So if you can sort of look at things under those pillars and channel your energy again, because at the end of the day, it's more about the energy. If something comes along that is really important to you, or even for doctors, you're busy, you're drained at the end of the day, and all of a sudden a patient comes in with an emergency that you have to attend to. Your adrenaline will peak and you have to do it, right? So it's the same with energy. If we can muster that energy or salvage that energy, ascribe it or attribute it to the things that are really important to us, identify where we are not using it to our advantage, then I think we will find more time on our hands. So that reframing I find is very useful.
That's interesting that you also get some of them to draw a clock, like a 24-hour clock.
Yeah.
And it reminds me with some of my concussion patients when I and was in my sports medicine practice, of drawing like a battery of where they were spending their energy, because when you are suffering with a concussion or post-concussion, that energy, that battery seems like it drains so much faster.
Right.
And so the clock is a really interesting exercise of doing a visual exercise and helping individuals to see laid out in front of them, and suddenly they're able to actually change the behavior.
Right.
So much of what you're doing also is overlapping with, well, it is overlapping with behavior change.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if you could speak a bit more of how you move from story or coach them from the story to behavior change.
I'm anchoring on the issue of behavior change because just want to bring in another element to the discussion, and that is sort of the be, do, have model. So often, we say, if I had $1 million, that's the have. Then be, do, have. I would be able to do so-and-so, whatever, and then I would be the luckiest person in the world or whatever. But to me, the whole essence of coaching is, and through the stories also, who are you? If you looked at yourself from the balcony or as a fly on the wall, what do you see? And yes, sometimes it's behavior, but it is the essence of who you are. So how can we move somebody to enact or to reflect the essence of who they are, and that we have to work on uncovering, that enables them to do, and that's where the behavior comes out, and then the have comes after that. But to me, the trick is moving the needle on their essence of being. So not seeing it that it is the doing, or that if I only had that, then I would be able to be. What will it take you to be? So there is a bit of a convergence of being and behavior.
Yeah, it's also, it just provoked a memory for me of I have said in some of my narrative medicine teaching sessions with various levels of learners, both the med students and the residents and sometimes faculty, of how story and narrative practices, like you described, are almost your own personal coaching tool.
Indeed. That
you always have at your disposal, of being able to just write down the current story. And then it was so interesting to hear you talk about using the imagination of, if I had $1 million.
I don't know why that. I think I was with my grandson yesterday, and something came on the TV about the bare naked ladies, and I told him, do you know the song, If I Had $1 Million? So that's why I was close to my thought.
Yeah, no, but it is something that, when I hear you talk about it, is helping also to move perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that very powerful, the be, do, have, because in our society that is so anchored on having. and keeping up with the Joneses. We think that that will be the antidote or the answer to all our woes. But how can we be satisfied with what we have? Gratitude for what we have, which opens a whole new vista into creating our narrative and how we see the world. So I continue to aspire to that, not just in my coaching, but in the essence of who I am.
I'm wondering if you could spend a little more time here of talking about the gratitude and how it relates to what you feel is a part of your coaching practice.
Yeah, gratitude. It's not always easy to get somebody on board or to tap into that, because a coachee would come wanting to be in a different place. So it can be artificial or a push, trying to put a square, peg into a round hole of telling them be grateful for what you have. But I think that gets to the essence of why coaching is different than advising, different than mentoring. We have to be non-judgmental as a coach. We have to accept the person where they're at. And if they're not feeling very grateful, it's those questions, tell me more, and what would make you feel grateful in that? What element of that gives you joy? You have to, it's all about digging deeper. But again, where coaching differs, as I implied, from advice giving or mentoring, is that it is a non-judgmental practice, accepting somebody where they are, whatever their narrative is. Sometimes you could be listening and say, wow, why don't you open your eyes? Can't you see? But it's not up to me. It's about their story, and it's respecting their story.
I hear you talking a lot about how there's some deep listening that you do as a coach, both to the individual that you're working with, but also hearing your own narratives come up as they bubble up, and then managing those as you try to continue to stay, as you say, in that non-judgmental space in order to actually focus on the person sitting in front of you. And how much there is a parallel with that as in our clinical practice of what we're trying to cultivate in our learners, of really being with the person to fully hear what they have to say, and then trying to negotiate how you're going to arrive together to what a goal is, whether it be the treatment goal or whether you're trying to bring a patient on board onto a medication that they don't understand and maybe not agree with. Yeah, I'm just noticing.
Yeah, so interesting. So there's this construct called the loop of awareness, where when we, as a coach, when you feel that we're getting distracted and starting to focus on something inside us, we have to be aware of that and then get outside again, get back to the business at hand. And sometimes we may need like a distraction to look at something on the wall or get a different sensory input, something that'll help us bridge back to the individual if we can't quite get there right yet. But yeah, you're right. It's almost like a shuttle car going back and forth sometimes. But the key is to be aware when that is becoming manifest.
I'm wondering if you'd like to speak about some of the programs that you have been doing with faculty at the Temerity Faculty of Medicine or with the postgrad learners with your Lead by Example program.
Would be delighted to do that. So a couple of years back, really to enhance what programs are doing for their leadership training for their learners, we started a Leading by Example. That's what we call the series. In postgrad medicine, specialties are really responsible for educating their own learners. But we felt, given that sort of resources across the board are limited and not always easy for the specialties, the programs, to tap into the expertise to give an array of talks, to access that, we would provide from postgrad, from central headquarters, as I call it, a series that the various programs could tap into by asking for a talk from a menu of topics that we distribute once or twice a year. So the menu of talks is fashioned after the Leads in a Caring Environment Framework, LEADS, with those being the domains of leadership according to this framework: lead self, engage others, achieve results, develop coalitions, and systems transformation. And we have at this point about 38 different topics that are available to the programs. So the program director gets that list, and they can call and say, hi, I see burnout and stress as one of the topics. We'd like someone to come and speak at our academic half day. Can you send somebody for Monday, May 3rd from 12 to 1? And the programs do not get a copy of the speakers. They just get a copy of the menu. And in the back office, we reach out to the various speakers on the various topics and line somebody up for that. It has been very popular. It services a need. The fact that our topics have grown from 11, I think, the first year to 38 speaks for itself. Just the generosity of faculty coming forward to do those talks, and the programs are definitely benefiting from it. So I think it's been a great addition to the leadership learning of our trainees. And thank you, Sarah, for being such a participant as one of the speakers.
Oh, as we've been bouncing back and forth, there's so much about the narrative medicine practice that is basically in hand with what you would do for coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And on that vein, I'm curious to hear you speak a bit more about why you feel that there is such a demand right now on themes of leadership for the postgraduate medical education.
I hesitate to say, because leadership learning is one of the CanMed's requirements, so we have to provide some learning, some teaching around it. But the reality is, everybody in healthcare is a leader. Whether you're a BGAL, whether you're a department chief, whether you're a learner, you are dealing with families, you are leading various initiatives, you are running cardiac arrests. You need leadership skills. And the framework, that LEADS framework, that starts with the ability to lead yourself with emotional intelligence, for example, develop character, understand the various virtues, etc. The need to be able to engage others in teamwork, the importance of communication. Leadership is all about achieving results. Where are you going? Why are you a leader? What is your purpose? And then as you expand, who else do you want on your team writ large, outside your little small group to get things done? What other groups do you need to engage, other specialties, other organizations? And finally, at the end of the day, it's about quality improvement and getting a better healthcare system for all. And together through that, we will transform the healthcare system. Everybody in healthcare needs those leadership skills and a leadership mindset to be able to effect and enact so that there is change, because right now healthcare is what we allude to as a VUCA system: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And we need leadership to navigate the healthcare system given that landscape.
I hear echoes of themes of collaborative leadership and compassionate leadership.
Indeed.
And it really, I think many of us, when we enter the healthcare field, we don't necessarily realize at the time that what we are being trained towards, or what is being asked of us, is to be people who can lead within rapidly changing environments.
Absolutely.
And such the diversity of practice environments that we find ourselves, and how quickly situations can change from the start of your day within the same hour.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think many of us went into medicine thinking that we would be autonomous. We would be well educated. We would have the tools to be able to take care of patients. But the more you get into it, you realize as a leader, this is not heroic leadership. It's not about a one-person show. We need people within our specialty, other professionals outside our specialty. The patient and their family are part of the team. So you need to be able to work in collaboration with others. You need those skills.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like as well, and I feel like I've also noticed this as you mature in your practice, is that you realize how interdependent we are and how, while we feel at times we have autonomous decision making, it really is actually influenced by a number of different factors that we need to juggle in order to arrive at that decision with
Absolutely.
the help of our teams.
Absolutely.
Are there any things that you actually wanted to share with our learners today as you arrived? I wanted to invite an opportunity to do that before we get too close to the end of our time
Yes, thank
together.
you. Yes, so I would say there is a construct that I would just like to dangle in front of the group, and that is the notion of vertical development. I think you mentioned that as you read my brief bio. So when it comes to leadership, traditionally people think, well, just like I said, I need the skills to be a good collaborator. I need to be able to communicate, all those skills and knowledge that goes along with it. But especially in this complex environment, what is increasingly appreciated is we need a different mindset. And I love the way you used, we are all interconnected. So vertical development refers to an increased sophistication in the way we make sense of the world, cognitively, emotionally, morally, ethically, geopolitically, socially. And a analogy that has been used is, let's say, an iPhone. You would not ask an iPhone 7 to do what an iPhone 17 is capable of doing. It just doesn't have the brains to be able to do that. And if our sort of cognition is limited to within its own echo chamber, the way we've always done things, the story we've told ourselves, and how we look at things without having been challenged or met people who see things differently, that cause us to think, whoa, I have to up my internal operating system a little. I'm not seeing the way I should be seeing the complexity of the situation. That is what vertical development is. So there are many descriptions, many frameworks. Some have 5 stages, some have 7 stages, but I'm really intrigued and fascinated by the notion that, as one expert has said, horizontal development, that skills acquisition, knowledge and skills, is like filling a cup with all kinds of more things. But vertical development is expanding the cup, where the cup is just bigger and can absorb more, but not just the items, just in terms of making sense of the world. So I just love that, and that is something I would like to see matricized, in a matrix of how we train our learners, how we upgrade our faculty, and really the whole healthcare system needs a rejig to be able to consider how to best care for our patients and to best care for each other.
Mm-hmm. When I hear you describe this vertical development, it actually makes me think a lot about the theme of narrative humility, of how much narrative humility allows us, or practicing that allows us to upgrade our systems. And I love the analogy with technology because, we can all relate to what an iPhone 7 versus an iPhone 17 can do. And if you want to keep moving yourself forward, of being open to be able to receive and expand your mind to different perspectives and evolve, a lot of it is rooted in having a humbleness around what the story I currently carry is just the story I currently carry.
Right.
And unless I try to look beyond and really listen to those around me, I won't necessarily move to see the things that I can't see right now if I
Right.
stay stuck in my story.
Absolutely. That is a great way to tie it all together, right? I love that. Thank you for introducing me to narrative humility.
It's sometimes, and it's just wordplay. Like, I think there's so much that people are already doing that they don't realize is a practice of humility. Those who are open-minded, the clinicians that we admire, that really can meet the person sitting from across the table and somehow make space for all of that and provide such holistic care. And I think part of your role as a coach is to help individuals to see how much more that they can actually do if they're able to sit with and also have the courage. I think a lot of this takes courage. I think when it is a step forward in courage when you can reach out and say to a coach, like, I'm stuck. And I think in narrative practices, a lot of those moments of honest journaling
Absolutely.
are moments of being courageous enough to actually see yourself. Those places that we are really difficult to go sometimes. And the humility really helps just to stay soft. It's a practice of self-compassion as well. And I
Nice.
think
I was
for
just
the
gonna-
coachee, go ahead, please.
Well, I was
do.
just going to go there. You made me think of Kirsten Neff and her whole approach to self-compassion and the notion of universality. Nobody out there is alone in having those moments of doubts and putting themselves down or whatever, and we just have to realize it is we're not alone.
And we are approaching sort of the time where I've invited you to speak for any themes that you wanted to share with our listeners. And also, we often give our guests an opportunity to read an excerpt of writing they might have, or I might be moved to share. But I'm wondering if there are any thoughts that you have as we start to wrap up our time together.
Yes, I will have one final thought. So I was personally blessed that this week, on the weekend, I had the opportunity to give a talk at my synagogue on the portion of the week. It always seems to be the right portion for the time, right? But given that I'm talking, I will just share. So we're right at the beginning. The first 7 plagues were talked about in this week's portion. And the basic theme that I drew out of it was listening. A lot of times Moses won't listen to me, or Pharaoh didn't listen to him, or whatever. And just in coaching, in being a person, in being a healthcarer, we just need to listen to each other. We need to listen to the patient, the importance of listening. And as my friend and colleague from British Columbia said, he would never ask the question, "How are you?" He would always say, "How are you really?" So we tend to default sometimes to superficial relationships. How are you? But it's that dig deep into how are you really that we have to be prepared to show our vulnerability. What is the story that is going on in our life right now, to be able to establish those meaningful connections. And that's about it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Anne, for giving us your time on the MBM Talks podcast.
My pleasure.
I'm Sarah Kim, the Medical Education Health Humanities Theme Lead for Temerity Faculty of Medicine, and today we were speaking with Dr. Anne Matlow. Thank you, Anne.
And thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out many other episodes. And if you're interested in learning more about narrative-based medicine, visit us online at narrativebasedmedicine.ca for more great content and to explore our upcoming offerings.